Hello and welcome everyone to another Power in Partnership presentation today. I invite us to all begin in the way that we normally do by bringing ourselves to this moment right here. If you're willing to take just a moment to pause, to breathe in all that you've been doing already today, noticing and exhaling, letting it go. And then breathing in any future thoughts, plans for dinner, plans for the rest of the day, breathing that in. And letting it go. And then finally breathing in the sweetness of this moment right here, right now, as we once again experience the ever-present presence of gravity holding us here in this moment. And I'd love to take a moment to bring our hands up to the heart center. And I'm going to bow to my guest who I'm about to introduce. Ruth King is with us today. And I bow to the wisdom of the space between that we all bring to this right here, right now, creating in the alchemical space today. So I am going to introduce Ruth King. She is an amazing woman of many, many talents, including a life coach, an author of almost a handful of books, including Healing Rage and a new one that's coming out, Mindful of Race, that will be coming out soon. Several others in the middle there. She's an international teacher of insight meditation, I think stretching from Washington and Spirit Rock and Charlotte, North Carolina, and all over in terms of her breadth of teaching and presence. And I would like to turn it over and just have you say hello to our audience.
Hello, audience, near and far. I'm looking forward to just sharing a little time with you today.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Our topic for today is going to be rage in relationships. And as I just said, one of Ruth's books is Healing Rage. So we will be looking at the energetic quality that brings to the space between and how to really work with that. And so as I've started each of these intentional interviews, I'm going to provide a few sentence stems just to, again, tether us to the present moment and help us take a little bit broader perspective of Ruth's career in general. So Ruth, if you're willing, as I'm sitting here, I'm experiencing.
As I'm sitting here, I'm experiencing excitement, which is right at the edge of a little anxiety, which is good news, I think, usually. It just tells me something's about to happen and I'm really not in total control of it. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah. So I hear that positive reframe on the little anxiety and excitement. Oh, something's about to happen. That's
yeah.
I'm going to borrow that right now.
Borrow that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And the next sentence stem would be where I would like to be at the end of my career. So what sparks joy? What inspires me each day to get up and keep doing what I'm doing?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that I have to tell you, I'm doing a lot of what I love to do and what sparks joy. And I actually don't see a need for that to change anytime soon. I mean, I actually feel like it's my life. I feel like I could continue to live. If I died tomorrow, it would be all right. I mean, I feel like I'm right where I like being, and I'm open to what to the surprise and the mystery of it.
Yeah. In that, I hear a whole lot of gratitude and acceptance for this is it. I'm doing what I want to be doing, and I am where I want to be.
Yeah,
in so many ways.
Exactly.
The future is the present moment. So it sounds like you're right where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what I'm doing, and It hasn't always been this way. So I know the contrast of it. So, yeah.
Great, great. Maybe you could say a little more about that in terms of one thing I appreciate about what I'm doing. What's a contrast of maybe where you were and where you are now?
Well, I think I just love that question because, I think that the biggest contrast for me is that there's less efforting, less struggle, less of a sense of trying to make something happen, more of setting intention and then kind of opening wide without being so attached to an outcome has given me a lot of relief in my life. Um, because there's so much, it just feels like life is not personal, it's not permanent, and it's not perfect. And I think I live with that mantra of just kind of slowing it down and being here. And yeah, yeah, without the struggle, without all that charge in the body and the heart. I just feel like the charge narrows the vision.
Mm-hmm.
So when I get real, like I'm efforting or working too hard at it, it actually creates a squinting in the eyes, and you're zoomed in. And I think my life right now is a bit more zoomed out, where I'm not trying to thread that needle. I can see the others, what happens once the needle's on the other side of the thread and it's attached to a larger fabric of life. And that just feels real right. And it is a huge contrast from just the tension of moving through life, trying really hard, because it's rooted in a sense of it's up to you to make it happen. That's an interesting kind of delusion, because we can do some of that, but a lot of it is opening to just what's right here and what's your sound in the bigger song kind of thing.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. I love the images you're offering to us about the tapestry or the song or just being a part of the bigger picture. And I love the image of zooming out, as we're doing this Zoom session.
That's right. Exactly.
Connecting across the miles.
Technology, right?
Yeah. And just loving that ability to see where you've been. And I encourage people to really listen to you. You have a presence, a growing presence through Sounds True and online and with your books. And you're really quite vulnerable and honest in sharing your experience of, going through those physical challenges with your heart and with different aspects of your life. And so to contrast that with where you were and where you are now, and that image of squinting and the constriction, I so get it. I feel it in my body. And what it reminds me of, Ruth, is that sense of the more I strive and I'm striving, the more strife I have in my life.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, they both start with S's.
Yeah.
And it results in struggle. I mean, it's just so much suffering there. Yeah. All these S's, we need to avoid them.
Right. So we're identifying some of the things we should avoid, and you're helping with the next sentence stem, which is one thing I would say that I do to tend to the space between. So one thing, because I think all of this can be within the consideration of power in partnership. How do we grow conscious partnership? And I think letting go of that struggle, that strife, that narrow, constricted, squinting place can definitely apply to the relational space. So what's something else you would offer to our audience right now, just as a tool to help tend to the space between, perhaps you and your beloved?
Yeah, the space between. I love that, because I think the space between is not empty. It's actually quite rich and textured, and we can actually invite curiosity. I mean, when you think about space, there's more space than anything. So we could turn our attention to just seeing what the quality of the space is. And another way to say that is to really feel the mood of the moment, the energetic mood that is infusing the space. Sometimes I like to bring a sense of warmth into the spaces in between us. And in Buddhism, we call that metta, the warmth of metta, loving kindness, that the space is warm, that we're kind of operating in. So I think that's a beautiful kind of thing. And to also see ourselves larger than, energetically, larger than this body, that there's energetic field that really creates a certain sense of we, not just you and me. And that we can just open to the third thing other than the two things that are in the relationship. I think another thing we can be sensitive to is to recognize ourselves in the other, as if we're looking at each other through their eyes, seeing us in a loving way. Like when I'm looking at you, I could say, okay, so what part of myself do I see? I see joy. Mm-hmm. I see the smile. We both wear glasses. There's a lot we have in common. Mm-hmm. I'm bald-headed. You're not. I mean, just celebrate, these ways that we mirror each other, especially when it gets difficult. Right. If we could remember the kindness, remember the smile, remember the things we share in common, because that's what quickly gets squeezed out of the equation. But we can go there, I think, if we're aware of the space between us, because it's the field we're operating in, the heart field that we're operating in, that influences how we then relate. So if the mood is great, then the next thing that might come out of my mouth could likely be more wholesome than if I'm not attuned to the mood, the space, the emotional atmosphere between us, then I might be unskillful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. You're really speaking to that third entity, if you will, the space between. It's not me, it's not you, it's the we, the third entity, and really seeing that sense of, if you've spot it, you've got it. Whatever you see in the other person, and I love to remember that works with the difficulty as well. There's some unhealed parts of myself there that I need to pay attention to and love up, and bring in that. You speak a lot about grace. I've had the great good fortune of having conversations with you and hearing you speak about grace as something almost that can grow from the difficulty or from the rage. So perhaps we can segue into the topic of rage in relationships, and maybe I don't know if you want to start there in terms of grace and rage, or start with a broader definition of rage.
Well, let me just play with that a little bit, because I think that I like speaking to it in the sense of grace. And here's why. Rage is often seen as an emotion you shouldn't have. But I'm not so sure that's the case. I mean, I actually think there's such a close tie to rage and intimacy that when we're in relationships, you can almost count on it raising its head, because rage has this way of showing up when we're the most tender, the most vulnerable. It's even, it's kind of like this way that we create some space so that we're not going to be harmed. We think we're creating that space. So I just think it's got a bad rap. Race deserves a seat at the table of emotions. It's a dignified emotion because it has a lot of truth to tell. And when we act out on it instead of understand what it's here to teach us, then we lose a lot. We lose a sense of connection with ourselves. We lose our connection with our most intimate partners. And we lose the knowledge that rage is really trying to teach us about why it's showing up, what it wants. I mean, it's really for our ear. And so the good thing about rage in relationships is that we have a chance to work with it because it's so immediate. It gets our attention if we're willing to work with it, of course. So I think there's an opportunity for us to see what it has to teach us about honesty, about fierce truth, about being in the body, about heart. So I think it offers a lot for us. It warms and informs our lives, and it leads us in a direction of more intimacy.
I love that idea of being able to invite that in a way of feeling the warmth, feeling that sense of intimacy. I think of intimacy as into me see. And
Oh,
that
that's
sense,
good.
yeah, that sense
I'm
of,
going to borrow that
you
one.
may borrow that one. I think it helps me because sometimes we do, when the rage comes up or the difficulty, the conflict, and it's connection trying to happen. It's healing.
Exactly.
It's growth. And yet we think we need to push back and protect ourselves and armor ourselves off, but to actually lean into it, allow the grace to flow in, allow the energy to help transform us. You said something I wanted to come back to and ask you to clarify. You said it's really for the ear, and either I didn't hear you correctly or I would like you to expand on that. What did you mean by that, Ruth?
It's for our ears. So, so first of all, we need to set an intention that we're going to work with the charge, because usually it really catches us by the throat, and, and then we're right into our reactivity, right into our disguises. But if we could pause right there at that intersection and listen, in fact, use the whole body as an ear,
right,
and just tune into if we can drop below the story we have about what's happening into the body to feel the charge, the aliveness, the terror, the heart palpitation, the heat, the warmth. If we could turn our attention to that and really see what the dance of rage is at the sensation level, at the sensate level. And we're going to discover a few things when we do that. We're going to discover that what we're experiencing has a real short life to it. We're really not on fire very long. And the story we have about it is usually an old story on top of a current experience. And this is a very liberating thing to touch into when we can make that shift. Now, we can't make that shift when we're in the heat of a rage explosion or, the best way to do that is when you're kind of offline and you have some regular practice. That's why I think mindfulness meditation is so helpful here, because you want to have a commitment where you're kind of saying, I'm going to commit to understanding my reactivity or my shutdown or my shopping habits, because that's another way that we hide, or the food. When we kind of decide we're going to take a look at what that's really about and we start getting ourselves still, we're going to learn a lot. We're going to learn we're going to learn that our emotions won't kill us. We're going to learn that they're temporary. And we're going to learn that we don't have to believe the stories we're carrying about a situation. And in fact, it's not always helpful. I talk about these 6 disguises of rage in my work. And these disguises are ways we've learned how to defend ourselves. By the time we're 12, we kind of gear up and put on our little outfits of how we're not going to ever be hurt again. And there's ways that we do that. There's 6 common disguises I've run into with the people that I've worked with. There's dominance. There's people that are highly controlling and critical. We've got the defiance disguise, which is what we mostly associate with rage, which is the people that can be belligerent and easily irritated and combative. We've got the distraction disguise that has a lot of impulse issues and restlessness, a bit of anxiety, and just have a very difficult time being still. This is where you might see some of the addictions, but not exclusively. And then we've got the devotion disguise, those of us that are serving other people and at the expense of our own well-being, and they're the pleasers, and they avoid conflict. So we have the devotion disguise there, and then we have the dependence disguise, the people that struggle with doubt, self-doubt, and confusion, and a sense of uncertainty, and can't seem to catch up and keep up in their lives. And then we have the depression disguise, who who kind of pulls back and is not wanting the spotlight and concerned of being disappointed by others and disappointing others. So we have these 6 ways that rage kind of shows its face, because it can't just be in a blaze all the time. So these are 6 strategies that we've used to move through the world, and we keep using them until they're re-examined. And in fact, in relationships, what we do is we attract our shadow disguise. So with the dominance disguise, the shadow is dependence, because the dependence disguise. And the dependence disguise, the shadow is dominance, because most dominant people that kind of wear that disguise, the worst thing for them is to be in any form of dependence. But they attract them, they marry them, the children are born and they happen to be dependent types. And so we find that the dog is dependent and so we find ourselves surrounded by our shadows so that we can have that sense of grace moving towards it. That's the transformation. That's the space between us that we need.
Right.
And the defiance disguise has the shadow of devotion disguise, and vice versa. Because most devotion types feel like being belligerent is just horrible, and unpleasing. And most defendant types feel like devotion is just the last thing they want to think about, especially when they're upset. And the same is true for depression disguise. Depression disguise is shadowed with the distraction disguise. The distraction is all over the place doing all kinds of things. And the depression disguise is saying, I don't want any of that energy, get away. So, but they attract each other, they marry each other, they have the children and the relationships on the job, or they find themselves constantly or repeatedly in a pattern of attracting the shadow so that they can befriend it, so that they can really learn that it's not personal, permanent, or perfect. So it's just another way that we play with this energy of rage. Because it's not proper to be in rage, but we have all been hit by a certain traumas or disappointments or heartbreaks, and so we have ways of protecting ourselves.
Yeah,
but it's a false refuge, right? Because it doesn't really. It helps us survive, but maybe not heal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in summary, what I'm hearing you say is rage is a naturally occurring emotion, that being human on this planet in this lifetime, that there will be some trauma, there will be some life experience, some inciting of a rageful response, and that we have different ways of disguising it. And there are 6 common ways that manifests, and you've explored them and named them, and even explored what the shadow side of that is, and how we tend to pair up with our polar opposite, so to speak, in order to heal that in the space between, to heal that within us. And I'm curious. What's that?
Yeah,
Yeah. And I'm curious, is there, well, first of all, I want to invite people to explore your website, because if they're listening, the audience members are thinking, well, which one am I? You have the assessment quiz, right? On ruthking.net. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So
there's on the products page, it's something you can check out and download and see what your disguise is.
Yeah. So once people have an idea and maybe an identity around that, is there a universal tool that helps all of us in the space between, or are there different tools for the different types? Could you speak to that?
I think there's a universal tool, and it mainly centers around befriending the energetic of rage and understanding its roots. So we kind of got set up. I think I also want to say that the twin of rage is shame. So, and shame is what makes rage distinct from anger.
Thank you.
We can all be angry, and we usually can kind of get over it and get on, Repeated anger would be more of the defiance disguise. So that's a whole nother kind of defense mechanism. But usually when we start to look at what I call a rage inheritance, that what's passed on to us early on in our lives is what's unfinished in our family concoction, so to speak. I grew up in a family where, it was common that rage was expressed. In fact, the dominance disguise was really predominant in my family. And so I had to be silent and hold my rage in until I became older. And then I was a rager. I even got a job that made it proper. I mean, I had the permission to rage a bit because I got paid to be a consultant and to point out what's wrong with people. It was perfect for my disguise. And, I came to realize that I was dead right, about a lot of things, but the operative word there is dead. Really cold on the inside, collapse on the inside. So until we kind of nail the pattern, like I got that from my family, it was a defense mechanism. So then I started controlling to make sure I'm never controlled. And then I look at my son, I look at my grandson, and I have a great granddaughter now that I'm looking at who's really animated. And I'm thinking, oh my God, not kidding. So I think we can start to see the tattoo of our rage inheritance. And rage is expressive, right? It's either expressive internally or externally or both. And until we can understand what that deeper root is and love it, love what it took. I mean, what it took for my mother and father to survive. It took all of it, not just the fact that they were rage. I'll never forget a woman saying to me when I was raging about my mother, right? I'm raging about my mother and what she wasn't and what she should have been and all of that. And this wise woman that I was in a healing circle with for 10 years, she leaned over to me and she says, well, Ruth, she didn't come here just to be your mother. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you're kidding. So it totally shook my head around this notion that I'm defining her life, so therefore I'm the victim. I mean, it just went on and on. And we see this in our relationships too. We have these expectations that are rooted in some belief, usually some lack, and we're trying to get something finished, and we usually go about it in a way that makes it unlikely. And it comes up mostly in our relationships because that's where we feel the most vulnerable, the most tender. Our partners tend to have more access to our heart. So what we have to do is shift the notion of feeling like we have to be at war and entertain the idea that this is rooted in something older that I have to transmute, not just keep doing the same patterns. So each generation is challenged with taking the inheritance and elevating the tribe with some new responsibility. And I find the universal medicine for this strategy is two things. One, it's developing a relationship with ease, which is a mindfulness meditation practice, would be my encouragement. But it could be any number of contemplative practices of getting still and knowing what that feels like on the inside. So that's a life practice. And the other one is what I call the artist, formerly known as rage. When we are in our artistic expression, whatever it might be, whether it's cooking or gardening or writing or dancing, listening to music, something that pierces, transcends our story and goes directly into the body and heart, we're going to really find a truer voice, and it'll be a wonderful use for the energy of rage. And if that could be done in a partnership where the partners get together and cook food and dance together, or they're taking a tango class, or they're learning how to do the cha-cha with the kids, or they're planting a garden together and enjoying it, or they get into an argument and they go out into the garden and put their hands in the dirt and plant a tree,
Yes, right? Yes.
or they listen to the music and don't talk. Don't try to work out the argument. Just let the music take you to the place of opening the heart. The heart and rage are tied together, and that's the important medicine. So those are two strategies that I think are helpful to all of these disguises. And what happens when we go there to developing a stillness practice and a creative practice, then we open to the wisdom of these disguises. And each of these disguises has a wisdom. And for example, the dominance disguise has the wisdom of discernment, this amazing ability to really zero in and see the big picture, but also see all the moving parts. And that's, and that's just a real pointed use of the energy of rage, and the warmth can be used that way. And the defiance disguise has the wisdom of fierce clarity. They know they can, when they're not blaming somebody else, they can actually be pointed about what's wrong instead of who's wrong, right? And then the distraction disguise shifts from, anxiety and moving all over the place and consuming to a sense of kind of a joyful and spontaneous even presence, this capacity to be present and full of exuberance at the same time. And the devotion disguise that's in service to people has this wisdom. They tumble into this wisdom of harmony, of really harmony without conditions, harmony without trying to get love or buy love. And then the dependence disguise opens more to creativity without apology. And the depression disguise has this amazing ability and wisdom to be in solitude without hiding. So these are some of the things we open up with and open up more directly to when we cultivate some capacity to be still and a loving relationship with ease, and also having some kind of artistic or creative expression.
Lovely. I am just soaking up what you're saying. There's such a deep resonance with what you're sharing. And as we say here in Hawaii, I have chicken skin. I'm just thinking about, what works in the space between as a tangible thing. And just to kind of summarize a few of the gems you've given us, using our body as our ear, or, I like to think of it as our barometer, like, oh, okay, my fists are clenched right now. My jaw's a little tight. What's going on? How can I move into a dance? And I'll tell you, Ruth, I had a dream come true 2 nights ago. My beloved came home and we started doing hula together. And we're part of and we're, it's intense energy, and we got that, and we're chanting, and it's like, yes, it's happening.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's exactly what you're talking about. It's transmuting that energy, because for me, anger is a natural energy that arises. It's meant to set right something that's wrong, reestablish boundaries. If I don't tend to it, it can ripple out into resentments. If it's hysterical, it's historical. That's
fabulous. Yes.
When it's in my bones and I'm like, where did this come from? I inherited something here. I can't even put a story to it. Don't bother putting the story to it. Just dance it out, plant a tree, do the expansion, the exhale, if you will, and then come back to that place of cultivating stillness. And I love what you said of developing a relationship with ease. And I even hear it change in my tone of voice. I'm learning how to self-regulate. And as I learn that skill, it affects the space between, and I can be more present, warm, and inviting to my beloved instead of being so, and then he retreats, and then I get even more.
That's right. Because that's what we do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think there's a place to actually confront the story of rage, but usually there's a fundamental inquiry we need to do with ourselves and inside the body to kind of just get grounded, so that when we do come out with a story, we're a bit more clear, and we're not dependent on whether the person responds a certain way, or we don't take it personally so much.
Right.
So I do think there's a place where we can use that energy to be more clear and more truthful.
Yes.
in the equation for sure.
I appreciated that you circled back to that, because that's absolutely another point that I wanted to highlight and give you great thanks for, which is in your Healing Rage book, you have a number of pages of questions as an introspective journaling exercise, you know, and to be able to bring in the mindfulness meditation practice to be in that place of curiosity and inquiry. And I did the writing exercises on my answer.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
And so that did help put words to the story, to the experience, but it wasn't in the moment. So I appreciate you circled back, and I would like to make that distinction for my own understanding, making sure I'm grokking what you're saying, but just that in the moment, maybe we don't try to get up in the story and process it.
That's right. That's right.
Work with the naturally occurring energy, the expansion, the contraction, the natural pulsation in between.
Yes.
And then in the meditative space, in that heart space of reflection and curiosity, to get more clarity, and then have an opportunity to share that with
exactly. Exactly. You got it. Yeah, that's you're talking my heart.
Yeah. And I think we could talk and talk. I think I'm just holding my tongue over here, but I am loving this conversation. And as we kind of wrap up our time, I'm curious, another part of my sentence stem intentional interview style is one way I tend to the space between me and my beloved, or one thing I appreciate about my beloved. And you have some good news to share there. So
I do.
Share a little about that.
Yeah, well, my beloved and I, my beloved is Dr. Barbara Riley. We've been together 10 years, and on our 10th anniversary, which was October the 1st, we got married.
Woohoo!
I know. We're here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So today it's still legal.
Right.
How that goes. Whew. But we're excited. We decided after 10 years in less than 10 minutes to mark the ceremony, to have a ceremony that, and what was so, and I think this has something to do with intention. The power of intention. When you decide, you're going to do something, whether it's get married or pay more attention to rage or what have you, the universe really comes along and supports you in it. And I was so touched with how much love poured through for us. And I think that's what happens. It's kind of like if you're going to buy a new car, all of a sudden you see the car you're going to buy on the road more than anything else. So there's something magnetic and beautiful about it. And I think it's just important that we have, that we know love directly, that we allow it. And I found with rage that there can be a certain allergic reaction to care and tenderness. And it's a good thing to pay attention to. And again, rage is always so closely connected to our intimate relationships. It's a way we can heal and really show up in the world in ways that's more honest and authentic. So I'm delighted with my beloved Barbara.
I hear that appreciation for setting the intention, being open to the magnetic pulls of, what happened. And after 10 years and 10 minutes, getting to that place of let's do this. And, and also coming back to what we started with in our conversation today of just that allowing things to unfold, having the intention, doing the next indicated thing, and then just really, not having to strive or struggle or get in that suffering mode.
Yeah, it's kind of like allowing and then opening and then receiving. Is can be a beautiful thing because there's so much we don't know, and rage can be a fixation. And what we're doing is trying to see what's left out when we lock in so tightly. So.
Well, I think you've done a wonderful sampling of helping us figure out power in partnership, reigniting connection, recognizing that rage is that warmth. It is a vehicle for intimacy. How do we harness that knowing and that opportunity that's presented to us? growing greater conscious partnership by tending to that space between through our cooking with music, creating together. I was going to show you, I'm working on this amazing painting behind.
Oh, look at that. I see that.
That was just a little peek. It's like a huge.
I noticed that. It was like this.
Ooh, that's some intimacy there. Into me, see, letting you see that.
Like a peekaboo.
She's got my back. So doing that creative bringing in the creative energy and then focusing on what matters most. That's the presence of this moment and the richness. And as you said at the beginning, when I said, where do I want to be at the end of my career? It's like, I'm there. It's like, let's celebrate that. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah. And that really goes to developing a relationship with calm and ease, where when the effort is reduced, you kind of have a bit more space to rest in and be and really feel how good life is in between the distress that we're in. There's goodness here. It's about equanimity and balance and being able to see what's here. When we're in lockdown mode, we miss out,
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, as I said before, I could just keep going, but in honor of our commitment, I'm going to wrap us up in a way of saying great, big, hearty thank you. And
it's been a pleasure.
Look forward to future collaboration with you. And I would love for you to introduce to our audience an opportunity where they could get some more information from you.
Oh, okay. My website is ruthking.net. Mm-hmm. And the gift I would like for everybody to have is a link on my website that's frequently asked questions about rage. I think you're going to love it. It actually speaks to these 6 disguises we talked about and their wisdom. And there's also links to other resources if you really want to dive into working this more intentionally.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a beautiful image at the top. Talk about a creative expression, just that energetic image of the two entwined.
That's right. In relationship. So that's, what is that link again? It's ruthking.net / it's under products, I think. It's under the products page. And you'll see FAQ about rage.
Yeah, the frequently asked questions. And we'll have all of that in the email and written up. For those of you listening, don't worry about trying to write it down. We'll get that information to you. And from there, check out the self-assessment so you can see which of the 6 common disguises you might find yourself pocketing your rage.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I would love to bookend our session today with another bow, just to allow the head to drop to the level of the heart as a symbol of many, many thanks to this.
Thank you so much. What a joy.
What a joy.
Thank you. Thank you, community. Enjoy this series. It's really important to us.
Thank you.
All right, then.